Me and Mike.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Mimi Panich.
Mike Sullivan?
Amy Landau, I'm the project manager.
Mike Falsetti?
Rosemary Arnold.
Kip Foley.
Thank you.
And having
Coming.
gotten that far, I would
Yeah,
move
and
to
we're happy
take
to have someone here.
No, I agree.
our agenda out of order and move ahead to item number 3, discussion of projects received.
So moved.
Second? Second?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So Amy, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, yeah, I've read over the applications, and there's a lot of information. And I can tell you what I think about each application at this point. Hi, Megan. But keep in mind that for many of these, we need more information, I believe. So, and this is, as you know, a process. And I've also been meeting with Alicia Zoller, who has a lot of experience with applications of this kind. So she's willing to meet with me to talk about some of these. So that's very helpful. All right. So the first one, City Hall stained glass windows. I'm kind of going in the order of the projects that. Okay.
Redesigning the office.
The projects that I feel best about, personally, okay, or not personally, but in terms of what I've read. Okay, so the City Hall stained glass windows project, that's historic rehabilitation,
Those up there for now, yeah.
Yep.
and it's the applicant is Michael McManus of the Department of Public Works with the co-applicant Friends of Holyoke City Hall. Olivia Moselle prepared this application. And the owner is the city, of course. And start and end date April 2019, ending April 2020. That's the estimated deadline. And it's for the rehabilitation and restoration of 3 stained glass windows in Holyoke City Hall, the ballroom. And the request is for $75,000, which is 50% of the budget. Total budget $150,000, but the entire budget for this whole restoration is $700,000, just so you know. And I can email you my notes with a grid that I created or that I completed for each of them. So these are the things I think are the pros for this project. The money would provide the match required for Massachusetts Historic Credit funding request, I think that is. So they would then be eligible to apply for $75,000. That's the remaining of that $150,000 budget. They'd be able to apply for that money from MHC. It aligns with the CPA goals because it would be repairing existing resources for a worthy goal of benefit to the public, as I see it. And it was mentioned in the CPA plan. It includes a quote from the restorer. I can go through. There's so much. I'm not sure how many we'll be able to get through because there's so much detail, but it seems that it would fill a funding gap. And this is the second phase of work, which was funded by the Holyoke Public Library Corporation and the MHC grant. Although that's a little confusing because I just said they need this to apply for the MHC grant. But I think they must have received some money.
Received one already.
Already, yeah. Right, they did. So they'll be eligible for another. Okay, the cons, as I see it, is the budget is not that detailed, but it seems like the work maybe is fairly straightforward. The timeline doesn't seem that clear. There's no steps listed. There's not, I mean, it's hard to answer the question about how the work will be in keeping with the U.S. Secretary of Interior standards. That's one of the questions in the application. I'm not really sure how an applicant would do that other than to say we won't be funded unless we do this, and show that they know what that means. So my recommendation at this point is that the CPC consider funding the stained glass project in full for $75,000. Obviously, you're just starting to discuss this, assuming all questions are answered, to your satisfaction and the financial details check out.
So moved.
I know you can't.
Well, we're not
Go.
going
Do you like it?
No, it's not,
Anybody got any
but there's a
objection?
public process. There's a
Yeah.
public
We
hearing.
have to have them come in and we talk to them.
Okay.
But I would just add, because, I mean, I too am very enthusiastic about this project. And one of the things I like about it is that even though it does come with a $700,000 price tag, this is something that can be accomplished in stages. The stages are discrete. We can be sure that one is fully funded before moving along to the next. It also may be the only thing that got discussed during our public hearing process that, as far as I know, was not controversial.
Right.
Everybody we talked to,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
was enthusiastic about the stained glass windows. So it's going to have public support. It's a reasonable amount of money.
Yes.
And I am all for filling in whatever details we need to get filled in and considering funding it in full.
Did they happen to say, what happens if they don't get the MHC grant? Or what's the timing? When do they expect to get that?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah, they need to.
And that's one of the things I have on the timeline for you to maybe note down that question and be sure to email that to me so I can consolidate all your questions for them.
I will do that.
But I am going to be meeting with her on Friday because I have a lot of questions. But timing of MHC grant, yeah.
So, two questions for, how much do we have available? And I thought it had to be divided up into 3 different categories.
Up to
No.
a point. We have to put aside 10% of our budget each year for each of the
each of-
three.
okay.
But beyond that 10%, we could do 10, 10, 80.
Okay.
You don't even
Yep.
have to cover all categories for the first funding cycle.
So how much do we have available?
You have, it's over $1 million.
That's the total, yeah.
The total is one, go ahead.
Well, so this year is $579,600.
Right.
Right, that's,
Because we didn't use any of the money from the last funding cycle, that added together equals,
Yeah, $1,068,960.
but,
$1.53.
you know, we took our 10% for administration out of that. Or 5%,
I
sorry.
think this includes that, doesn't it?
5% is our administration, but,
What, $1,068,000, it's very tiny, $960.53. And I think it includes those expenses that you're talking about. I mean, they might not be totally up to date, but in terms of administrative.
yes, well.
So there's a lot of money in the budget.
Yes, we do have.
From not for administrative, but for
And we have-
projects.
And we have 10% for each project left over from last year, that carries forward. And of course, we have 10% for each project from this year's funding. That has to be added to that.
So that would be $100,000 approximately in each one of the categories.
Yeah.
Yeah,
approximately.
that's right. Mhm.
Yes.
A little over $100,000 in each. And then
And then
there's the
rest
budgeted
is-
reserve that gets carried over
Yeah.
That's
to.
the minimum amount, but
Right.
you don't have
Yeah,
to spend it,
exactly.
it could sit and
Yeah.
roll over to next year.
Exactly, exactly.
You don't have to spend any money at all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we could roll all of it over.
That's
Yeah.
all.
Well, this is a good project.
Okay, so anybody else have any other questions at this point in time about this particular project? Okay, so you can move forward, I guess, the next one?
Madam
Go
Chairman, what is our function, I'm somewhat confused for a moment. What is our function with these, reviewing these at the moment?
Yes,
are we-
we're just reviewing them at this point in
We're not
time.
expected to vote on anything.
No,
We're just having the first discussion. In fact, I don't know if we'll be able to get through all of them in this first meeting because there's so many.
we have till the end of February to that's when we'll be voting on the projects. And in the meantime, we have to have public
We just want to gather
hearings on
information
them
and talk to them.
and, you know, have
That
them come in and
timeline.
do a presentation to us and, yeah.
Yeah, now my impression is that part of the point of tonight is, you know, some of us have looked at some of these projects. I'm not sure anybody besides Amy and Elaine have looked at all of them. But to the extent we have questions that need to be answered before we go into the public hearing part of this and have a final vote, I think it's good to start identifying those questions and getting them to the applicants.
Yeah, and just so you can know what my impressions are at this point, you know,
No, go ahead.
what I think, you know, what I
as
recommend
part of
with
the
what I
public,
know.
When we had our public meeting, everyone there said that they wanted the stained glass windows done. So that if they need, if they don't have any you have to have some kind of
Yeah,
support from the
Right.
community, written support. So if they need that, maybe we can take, the information from when we had that public meeting at the senior center and they should, not us, they should take some of that information to add into their, if they don't have any
That could be
public,
a recommendation to them to.
yeah, if they don't have any public written support, because they're supposed to have that, if they don't have that, they could take that information from our meeting. That's in our preservation plan.
Uh-huh,
It's in the plan, and they could take that as their public,
okay.
support.
Although it seems like some of that just comes from the people who happen to show up at the
It
hearing.
it was, but,
Yeah.
you don't have to have the whole city's support. You
Right,
just-
but I
you just
think
have to
that
have
there's a
specific-
part of the process where they present and the public can come and hear
Oh,
and
yeah. Oh,
respond.
absolutely.
And that's even more important,
Absolutely,
probably,
no,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
know that, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, but in their grant application, they're supposed to provide written public support.
Uh-huh.
So if they don't have any, which I don't know if they do.
Well, I think the application says, whatever is relevant or applicable, and it lists a bunch of documents, and so it's sort of up to the applicant. I don't know if they all really, I wouldn't consider an application incomplete if they didn't have a letter of support. That's all that I'm saying.
Well, right, but it still would be helpful if they
It
did.
helps their project.
Yeah, it helps their project, so if they could get that information from our preservation plan, it's in there.
Okay, shall we go on?
Yes.
Okay, so Annex Lanterns next. It's also, this is owned by the city, of course. The lanterns, the project would be to rehabilitate the 2 wrought iron lanterns outside the annex building that have been removed because they've been destroyed over time. And the applicant, again, is the Friends of Holyoke with a co-applicant of the DPW, which I assume is also Mike McManus.
It is.
Yeah. And that's for $500, which is 50% of the budget. The application said starting in 2015, so I guess she's thinking about when they first started working on this, not the start of this specific project, and that they said it would end 2019, so it's not very specific. But let's see, what do I have here? Uh-oh, okay, I have to find my notes on this, sorry. Let's see. Sorry, I was editing a lot of things quickly, and I might have deleted something.
So I have talked to Mike McManus on this one. This is one of the ones that I had to look into. And so they have a gentleman who's willing to complete the project.
Yeah, Camille Peters, the
Camille,
sculptor,
yep.
yeah,
And then,
metal worker.
so, and they're all the original lanterns, and then
Yeah.
they would just be put back up.
Yeah, I think, I didn't write down the pros and cons for this, but I did write down that I recommended it. Giving them the funding in full, assuming all questions are answered,
So I only had one question when I read it, and it was that once they put the lanterns back up, then they were questionable as to when they would be lit again.
I was wondering that too, yeah, and who would be responsible for that? Maybe the
You light them,
DPW.
please? Yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess that's just a question as, who's responsible for lighting them? Once they're
Right.
fixed, can we get them lit? Because that's the whole purpose of
yeah,
having
that was my
lanterns.
question too.
We talk about a light bulb, right?
No, it's the lantern themselves, and it needs to be totally redone.
It needs to be mounted and the electricity has to be working and everything.
Right.
So it's just a matter of who is going to make sure that all
And,
functions.
and it'll be ready to function, but who actually lights it up is, so that was my
And
only
and who mounts it?
Electrician, city
I
electrician.
think it's just the DPW.
I think probably, but yeah, that's a good question.
But in this application, it says they'll get it all ready to go, they're just not sure when they will be lit. So I guess one of my questions to them would be, can we get more specific as to when it could be lit?
Right, if we're gonna give them the money, we wanna know, we
Yeah,
want it to
it'd
be
be
a
nice to be lit.
finished project, yes.
And they've already put some money into this project, I think,
Right.
through the DPW, $200. And what happened was the people who were supposed to restore it kind of folded, so I think there were going to be students who were going to do it.
It was going to go through Dean Tech, and now
Right.
they have somebody who's
Right.
volunteering this time.
Well,
The quote is, "The decision to electrify will be considered at a later date."
Right.
Why?
So I just feel
Find
that,
that out.
it's just a good question to ask.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. That's why I had that too.
Like, could we get these lit?
Yeah. Actually, I know Camille Peters. Just thought I mean, he's a metal worker who's
Yeah, he's a great
pretty
metal worker. Yeah,
talented.
Very
Yeah.
famous, yeah.
Camille,
Yeah, Camille. Okay,
So,
so
Mike, do you know anything about the lighting of the lanterns?
no, I don't, and that shouldn't, the other thing we gotta question is, how much longer is that building gonna be utilized and standing? Right now, the roof is leaking,
One of
the
those.
floors are buckling, the elevator's in need of work,
But
has
it'll have two good lanterns.
asbestos, a bad heating system. I mean, you know, it's not a lot of money, but I wouldn't want to be putting on a building that might not be standing in 5 years. It's one of the harder, you know, as we go through this whole
Renewal.
process
Okay.
in Hoyoke, what stays, and that building is going to need millions of dollars worth of work if it's going to keep on functioning. Not just new lanterns.
but even if I don't know, I do see your point, but 5 years, like even if they were to be there for 5 years, that would
Yeah,
be
it seems
something,
like
because you
maybe-
can't really expect something necessarily that you restore. It may not last more than 5 years, even if the building was standing, just,
Well, it's certainly a minimal amount
yeah.
And we
for a very good thing.
may be able to use them on, if they, wherever they transfer those offices to.
That, or, yeah, I mean, they're,
Although I guess they belong historically with that building, so.
if they take it down.
Yeah,
then they
architectural
could
salvage
be-
is a thing.
Yeah.
What, Mimi?
Architectural salvage is a thing, you know.
Oh, okay, okay. That's true.
Just wanted to make everybody aware.
Yes.
Okay.
No, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We,
Okay. All right, so number 3, I want to talk about Smith's Ferry Cemetery. Sorry, they're out of order from what you
Okay,
have.
this is good.
Okay, no problem.
What are we doing next?
Smith's Ferry Cemetery Restoration is the
Makes
project.
sense.
So this is the historic rehabilitation of the cemetery, repairing 8 to 10 or more, but 8 to 10 plus. She put broken headstones between April 2019 and the summer of 2019. And the applicant is the City of Holyoke Parks and Rec Department. No contact was listed, but I know in their eligibility it was Terry Shepard. So she's probably the contact. But it's also with the Friends of Historic Cemeteries, I believe they're called. And Olivia Moselle, again, prepared this. So, and their request is $5,300, which is 100% of the budget. That's based on an actual quote. What? 5,300?
300.
5,300, right. And the pros are, to my mind, it aligns with CPA goals. You know, it's a historic cemetery from 1807, one of the earliest burial grounds. It's just under 3 acres by the Connecticut River with 130 gravestones. It's historically significant to both Northampton and Holyoke. It has veterans buried from the Revolutionary War, 175 of them. 15 World War II veterans, someone from Vietnam, and 2 others. And also has famous names of people who are buried: Underwood, Smiths, and Lyman and Parsons. Don't feel like you have to type it on. And there's also a public safety issue about the broken headstones, and lots of detail in the application on the cemetery workshop that was conducted by the contractor, who seems very experienced. And cons, the application narrative and budget info could be a little more complete. I have many questions about it. It didn't include a Holyoke Historic Commission letter, but when I requested one, she promptly sent it to me, so maybe she just forgot to include it. and there's a lot of attachments that go with it. So yeah, I think this one looks good, and think that the CPC should consider funding. I would recommend funding the project request in full, assuming all questions are answered that the CPC has to its satisfaction.
Okay.
It also continues work that has been done in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, continues work that has been done.
Would complete the restoration
Right.
work that they were able to get a good, path down the road in terms of completing, but this would kind of take them to the end goal of finishing this project.
So they've already restored some headstones already? Okay, I guess they have. I didn't know that. All right. That's right. They had funding from the DPW. Okay. So any thoughts about this one?
My first thought would be, do they need the whole thing all at once, or could this be spread out over a couple of years?
Well, that's up to the CPC, and I think that basically it would be probably based on, the money would be dispersed after the work was done, and based on invoices, and there'd have to be some kind of site oversight.
When they come in.
Yep.
That'd be a good question for them to answer.
Well, I think it's really up to the committee to decide about.
Right, answer the
yeah.
question, then we'll decide if we like their answer.
But also, I think that these are questions that affect all the projects too. Like, how are you going to go about, that really the committee needs to think about. And I think usually it's just, the money is dispersed when you get an invoice and not beforehand. And
Could it be dispersed like by completion? If it's 50% completed, you can fund that, and then once completed, you disperse the other half? Could it be something like
I guess so. I mean, but although in this particular case, I don't know where they would get the money up front for this person. I'm just thinking about it to start the work.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess I'm putting my question the wrong way. If they were only to get 2,500 on the first go-around, see what they get done, what it looks like,
I would
what the
think so
results are,
if it's
and then come back for a second round.
if it's 8 to 10 headstones, they could always divide it up into 5 headstones first.
For some of these projects.
Okay.
Might be a lot of mobilization, demobilization.
It's possible to see the work they've already done too.
Yes.
And that came up last meeting around the degree of oversight.
Right.
To what extent are people then going to the sites to do site visits? Either
Yeah,
before
that was
work
on the
is done,
agenda.
Or in the middle, or in the end.
So if this is the end of a project, then it seems like certainly if we want to do our due diligence, we should get out there and check it out.
Also, I think that your point is good, Megan. We could find out, and also what you're saying, Mike, is how well have they done within the time frame with the money they received before? Was that done on a timely basis? And
Exactly.
Yeah, that's all good.
check into.
And if we're gonna proceed, do we have the ability to disperse monies differently with the different projects, or do we have to be consistent in the way that we do it?
We have to be consistent, and
Right.
I believe that in June next year, we'll be giving them all of the projects that we've approved, a letter. It'll be in conjunction with the law department. It'll be a legal document that tells them that this is how much money you have, and you can go ahead with the project. We recommend it, we accept it. And I think at that point, they'll go to whoever's doing the project and show them the letter, and they should start the project. And then as the invoices come in, as they do the work, then we'll pay the invoices. But I don't think we'll pay anybody up front. Yeah, I don't think that's the plan.
So we don't actually pay the invoices, we pay them to pay the invoices.
We pay who?
Reimburse them.
We give them.
Well, they
the-
would
we
have to
give them the
give
money.
me an invoice for
Well,
the
that's
work
just
to be
to back
done.
up their
We're not gonna cut a
project, but
check
we
to-
don't actually pay the invoice, they pay their
No, we
invoices.
pay the applicant pays the contractor.
So if they're asking for $5,300, then we award them this project, we give them the $5,300 when the project is accomplished, and then they put the funds where they need to go.
Yeah.
It's not up to us to do that.
I don't know if we'll give them just the whole amount at the end. I think we maybe we'll be paying them as they go along, as the money's requested. I don't know if
I
the
think-
architect will, or the developer will do the project unless they get paid a little bit here and there as they go along.
I know with many projects, other CPA projects, I think they sort of hold on to the last 10% of the funding until it's completed. But I think also it might be done differently for different projects depending on the needs of that project, you know, so.
And how much money
to
is
see.
involved?
It's $5,300. I mean,
Yes, thank you.
If they don't, we could give them we could give them $100 if they don't do anything with it, and keep it.
well, we have to have faith and trust on the people that are before us.
I don't think that you have to not fall into the good guy trap. Like, you know, we have to think, you can't assume that because somebody, you know, you think of this person as a good person, that means the project. I'm just saying this not just for this project, but for all the projects. You can't fall into the good guy trap because anything can happen. I mean, somebody who's leading the project could die, you know, or something, you know, could get, you know, lots of things change. So I think we should try to avoid just falling into that trap.
Well,
We
it's
should
true,
just try
but
to be
it's also true that the risk we take is lower with a $5,300 project than the risk we take with a
That's definitely true.
$200,000 project.
Yes,
Big
that's
difference.
definitely true.
Big
Yes.
difference. 2 lanterns, I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
And then another question comes to mind, like, I know that we're talking about all this like oversight or going and visiting and making sure that, right? How is that gonna work out?
I think-
Like with the availability of this committee to be going, like, for example, what you're saying is $5,300 to do this work. How much of the time is it gonna go on to go and see that this is completed?
Well, that's why everybody has their projects to go and look at.
Well, that's on the agenda.
Oh, so you don't have to go
Site
look at
visits
them
were
all.
on the agenda because
Yeah.
that could be something that I would do,
And she would,
know.
and in conjunction with Amy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would certainly.
or on
do-
my own, you know,
I would certainly do it.
Right.
if there's enough.
But you wouldn't, like what Mike is saying, a $5,300 project versus a $200,000 project, you would be more in, you know, like overseeing a $200,000 project.
I'm gonna go
versus-
look at the $500 project.
They should all be,
Yeah, I think
Made
they
accountable
all
to
need
do
site
their due
visits.
diligence,
Yeah.
but
So then we have to be consistent in the way that we disperse the funds
agree.
then?
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Are we actually dispersing the funds, or will that come through the city?
The city council has to approve
I
your
know they have
recommendation.
to approve them, but once it's been approved and an invoice comes, are we gonna have a CPA checkbook that's cutting this thing, or is it?
We have the funds already.
I think it goes,
There's,
well,
it's already,
Because we have a treasurer, right?
Mm-hmm.
that has-
and we already
it goes
have,
through the city. I
we
thought
already
addressed
have this money in the city budget for
We have
CPA.
an
I
account.
understand that,
Oh.
but what I'm saying, I'm talking about is the mechanics of it, like
Who cuts the check?
cutting the check.
I would do it. I would have to do it through Munis and reimburse them.
Requested, Amy?
Yeah, I would have to make a purchase order.
Yeah. Yes.
Right,
And then it goes
but
to the
then-
city.
But then it goes from there to the treasurer's
Right.
office, and they're the ones that are
They make out of
signing the
they
check.
make,
and-
they make out
Oh,
of
well,
warrant.
it's just like any purchase, I think, goes through.
Right, of course, that's what I'm
purchasing or
saying,
whatever.
so-
Uh-huh.
Right, we may be signing off on the disbursement, but we're not gonna be sitting here with a checkbook,
Oh,
No,
giving out
no, we're not.
checks to people.
We're either approving or
So they must
disapproving.
have, my point is, they must have a well-worn system about how money gets dispersed based on invoices.
And furthermore, every office in this city that administers grants, as for instance, the Alicia Zoller's office, must have some oversight process that we can crib off of. I mean, I think we are, to a certain extent, wasting our time worrying about the mechanics tonight.
Yes, I agree.
Amen.
So, next
Okay.
project.
So next, the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club. This is the outdoor recreation rehabilitation for a two-phase park renovation at 7 Cosmos Way. The applicant, obviously, is Holyoke Boys and Girls Club, private nonprofit after-school program for low-income youth. And they own this land, from what I can see. And the start date, September 2019 to June 2020. Although, let's see, the timeline on page 8 says September to October 2019, but that's probably an error. because that's just 1
I
month.
think they're gonna do it 2 phases.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
two
but-
phases. I did read this.
Right,
one.
but I don't think they could do any of that in 1 month. So anyway, most of it's about the first phase. So the total request is for $359,689, which is 96% of the budget for this 2-phase park rehabilitation. But they've mostly described phase 1, which is the basketball court and the green infrastructure section, and that request is for $171,089. The total budget for that, though, is $184,944. So, and the phase 2 is the playground area, which would be for $188,600. I don't know what the total budget is for that. And so basically, the pros I see with this project are that it aligns with CPA goals for outdoor recreation and rehabilitation. The park is, according to the application anyway, is in wide use by many children, not just the Boys and Girls Club, but the school buses stop there, and the neighborhood children use it, and families. It does repair existing resources for a worthy goal, and they have a detailed budget for phase 1. I also met with Eileen Kavanaugh and her staff, and they seemed pretty thorough and committed to this project. The cons, the budget is less detailed. It doesn't have a timeline for phase 2. Maybe they're thinking, though, that even though ideally they might like all the money, that maybe this would just end up being for phase 1. But
I think that it says right here that they would finalize all contractual labor within 60 days. September and October, that's it. They're gonna
Okay.
do the whole project.
yeah, so but they realize that when I talk to them, that they don't, they understand that it might be just that the first phase could be funded for this year, and maybe the next phase next year, although ideally they'd like the full funding. So the con is additional funding, because it's always best if CPA can fill a funding gap. The additional source of funding they have is a vague pledge with no amount given from a bank, which I think is probably People's Bank, because it's in there. Which would be, let's see, from a bank attached, would be 96% of the funding. So it seems like the CPA funding would provide the bulk of funding rather than filling a funding gap. However, they have plans to apply for more funding elsewhere through a corporate foundation called Kaboom, and they think CPA will enable them to, be able to get that funding.
Yeah, we have to keep that in mind, I think, when we're looking at these projects.
Yes.
A lot of them are gonna use, if we give them a grant agreement, they're gonna take that grant agreement, go to someplace else and say, look, we got this money, so can you give us the rest? Or, so it may not be even that they have the full amount to be able to do the projects,
Right.
but we're gonna give them
Yeah.
the jump start that they need.
It doesn't seem like any of these are, or not many of them are the ideal situation where just this money will fill a gap, unfortunately, but they're sort of second to that. And there's no specifics on a deed restriction, but as I wasn't really expecting that. And I found out more about what the CPC can do with that, and it's something that's been done many times by the Office of Community Development. The other thing I noticed is they have a very small maintenance staff, only 2 plus a director of operations. I don't know if they're full or part-time, but I'm just thinking about going forward, maintaining the changes, the work. And basically, I think this seems like a good project to fund for at least the first phase, $171,089, on the condition that the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club agrees to sign a deed restriction, which is a lien, on the land recorded at the Registry of Deeds in Springfield. This will state that if the land is sold, demolished, or closed to the public during a certain specified period, for example, 5 years, based on the investment, because after 5 years the playground might get worn out anyway, they would need to return the money, and by the 5th year it probably would be not the full amount, because there's going to be wear and tear, so maybe it would be 50% if there was any change. But this deed would be included in the project budget is what I'm proposing, because it costs about $75, and I can get a sample from Alicia Zoller at the Office of Community Development.
Are they aware of that, Amy?
What?
Are the deed restrictions? Is the Boys Club aware of that deed restriction?
Well,
The need for?
yeah, well, it was put in the eligibility letter, and they said they just didn't really know how to go about it because it's hard for these applicants to know that information, and it's something really that the committee decides. But I found out through Alicia Zoller that, we can use a template for this and create a deed restriction that for a set period of time like that.
Okay, good.
So.
Any other questions on that project? Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, keep going? No comments? What did you think of the project, though?
Terrific.
I love this project.
It's a big chunk of the budget is all, and I think if we can phase it, we'll be better off.
Yeah, all the projects.
So you're thinking
So
funding
my only
the first
concern
phase?
with phasing it would be if they're using it as leverage.
Well,
Or
if they're
other
using it
project-
for
or other
leverage,
grants.
that ought to appear in their
Right,
paperwork.
yeah.
Because,
So that's
I
a
mean,
good
if they-
question to ask them.
Yeah,
For phase one,
They
it
don't say
doesn't
it.
seem to be. It's a $13,000 gap, right?
yeah, I mean, that does
Doesn't
not
seem
look.
like it is?
It looks
Yeah.
like, to me, basically, like they're asking us for 100% of what they need,
Right.
And 100% of what they need is very nice, but that's 400,000 out of our first round, and that's
Right.
a big chunk of change.
Yeah, it seems like they probably could do it in
So
two
actually, when
phases.
you look,
Yeah.
I think a big piece of that gap is explained in personnel, so they're putting in, for the CPA fund half, Boys Club fund half, so that's half of the
That
gap
would- that-
between the two. I
right.
don't see the other one, but they come up,
No, I think that's a good one
So
to
there's
put
some-
in a phase, yeah.
right, some of the costs of managing it. And they gotta come up with some cash.
Right.
That's the way it looks. You
Right.
can ask
Oh, I'm
them.
not sure what you're talking about.
Just in the,
Under,
5,
yeah, page
their
5,
budget.
under
project
phase
budget.
one.
Oh, okay, I'm looking at my abridged notes here, so,
But it's just right here, so they're,
thanks.
go ahead.
A, personnel, under
Oh,
phase one.
oh, okay. Mhm. Okay, you're looking at a small item on the budget there,
So they're,
okay.
so they're gonna put up the personnel
In kind, it
Right,
seems like
that's
they're
true.
matching, covering the
with the bank.
expense.
I think their budget is more detailed than any that I've gotten,
Okay, cool.
so.
No, it's a great project.
Okay, so Mimi, you were saying you would lean more towards just the first, funding the first phase.
Yeah, and depending on what else we choose to fund, but they don't have to do it at once. They have broken it down into two pieces.
Right,
And, if we were to fund piece one, then next year they can come back if it's a successful.
and especially if
Yeah.
you see
Right.
how
So do
well
I.
phase one goes, then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's good to, okay. All right. Okay, so then, now we're getting into the developer incentive applications.
Skipping over the Plowtech application?
The Clutech?
Oh, wait, I didn't do that one?
No,
Yeah, I wanted to,
And
wait,
that
how
one
did I
is-
skip that one? Sorry. Hold on, let me find my
Really
notes.
simple.
on it.
Okay.
I definitely meant to do that. Let's see, where it is. Okay. I have too many papers. Okay. So, yeah, for this one, I'm glad you mentioned that. Open space acquisition preservation of 52.5 acres on Rock Valley Road. And the applicant is Lee Halaz of Kestrel Land Trust. And the co-applicant is now the City of Holyoke Conservation Commission. That's a change with Andrew Smith. He's the head of that. The owner of the land is Marcia Cassidy. She's the current owner of this land, privately owned. They're saying they'd like to start work as soon as possible and complete it June 30th, 2019, which would be acquisition of this land, or purchase. And the total request is for $174,990, which is 100% of the budget. Okay, I don't know where I put, oh, here it is, okay. The pros are really does align with the CPA goals by acquiring and preserving valuable open space conservation land, which includes city's drinking water supply in the northwest corner, forest land, farmland, streams, wetlands, and so forth. And the public would have access to this land through a public park called Glutech. Is it Glotech? Or?
It's Glotech Park.
Glotech, okay, I've heard it.
The 10-acre site.
Right, which is already owned by the city. So it's a passive recreation opportunity for West Holyoke residents.
It was actually donated to the city by the Glotech family.
Okay,
Many years ago, I guess.
and the city will own the land, and Kestrel would hold the conservation restriction.
Which you have to have for open space projects.
Yeah, when you're acquiring open space, you have to have it.
Amy, what does that mean?
So a conservation restriction on a property means that whoever holds the conservation restriction will every year monitor it, make sure there's no infringements on it. If there's any problems with the site, then they would.
It's a perpetual restriction. It
Yeah,
means that
but
it
they-
could never be sold
Right,
or
it can
demolished or
never be sold
changed.
or
yeah.
developed. But they go out every year and walk it, make sure there's no, if there's ATVs out there, then they'll notify the city and say, there's infringements or whatever to take care of that. But
Now, if,
So they have custodial rights, they're the guardians of the.
they're
of
the
land.
guardians, and they help the city.
Yeah,
So the
if-
city doesn't have to take on that,
Guardianship role.
they do it
It
for them.
protects the investment of the city to and it's a requirement under CPA when you're
Yes, you have to
acquiring
have it.
land, yeah. So, and there's little ongoing funding needed. It would be owned by the city. Kestrel Trust has a lot of experience with land conservation projects and CPA communities in the Pioneer Valley. Now the cons, that what I've been able to see, the unofficial property record lists Bruce Glutech, not Marcia Cassidy, as the owner.
So he passed away, and she has inherited this.
Okay, so I guess we would just need some
An
documentation
update.
on it.
who are we paying for this? If it's
No,
been
it would-
donated.
No.
No.
The park, the 10-acre park was
Oh, the 10
donated.
Okay.
The 52 acres is an extension of the park, and it's, and she was going to develop this. So instead, we went in as Kestrel Land Trust and along with Holyoke Conservation Commission to try to protect this as a backyard for the neighbors in the Rock Valley, the feel of Rock Valley, keeping it as open space and
Yes. Not to mention the value of maintaining things like valuable farmland with the climate reports we're getting.
Talking about value, did they have an estimate? Did somebody do a?
we're going to do an appraisal in
I have
January.
a city assessment. I was just going to go through that, which is a lot higher than what they're offering. The assessment value by the city is $332,700.
Right.
Okay, the other thing that you should know is the current owner, Marcia Cassidy, owes $87,000 in taxes, I was told,
Yes.
by Kestrel. But the contract would stipulate her immediate payment to the city upon purchase of the land, I believe. That wasn't in the application, I don't think, but this is
It's
what I was
part of the
told.
title.
Yeah.
That's a nice benefit.
Yes, it is.
Well,
So she's gonna pay her taxes with the money.
She has to pay her taxes before
She gets the money.
any closing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
But a
means we
developer could
basically,
come in and offer a whole heck of a lot more than this.
But,
Yes,
but
which
they're
Just
not,
pay the taxes.
no, we have a purchase and sale
Whoa,
signed,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, they
So
do
if
have
But
that.
if it doesn't get funded,
If it doesn't get funded, a
then it could
developer
go to
will be in there.
develop it,
yeah.
and they would
And
come, and
they're-
they'd pay the back taxes, but they would,
It's theirs.
And then they'll,
would be-
right. So there's been several developers looking
I'm
at it.
sure.
We've just signed with Marcia because she would like to see it protected.
I can tell you, I walked it
Yeah.
last week.
Oh, it's great.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful
So
place. And
Wow.
it's got really strong, not endangered species, but species of concern on it. And plus, it's so nice to have it as it's just, you can, all those people that live there can just walk out in their backyards and be there in a really nice backyard setting. But you can also access it through the park, so you can park there and just walk in and enjoy the,
I was
space.
amazed by the network of trails back there. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know where they're all going, but
I think
was-
that's just where
it
people
seems like
walk.
it really gets used.
Yeah, I think
It's a
it-
beautiful piece of property, and you can access it from the park, which is what I
Right.
did.
And there's a beautiful little vernal pool right there that we'll certify, and so that it stays protected and on the registry of deeds.
I'm wondering why
have
the
really
purchase.
considerable popular support. I know this because I know from the planning board what kind of neighborhood opposition there was to the attempt to build a solar farm out there.
Right.
Those folks
To
are
build what?
very involved, and they are going to come out and,
Somebody's building a house right across the street.
yeah.
That is another contention. That is a group home. And nobody was notified on that either. But we have a letter
Yeah.
in from.
But at any rate,
Conservation on that.
you know, I think one of the values of this is that I think it will come with a lot of popular support, and it's set up to go. You know, there are letters in support of it. It is a very good price for this piece of land.
Got a
It's,
ton of benefits for the
yeah,
city.
yeah, this one, of all of them, this one looked the most to me like a slam dunk.
Great.
Well, I guess I gotta play the bad guy on this one.
That's it.
I haven't said, okay,
Right.
go ahead.
If you look at the Conservation Department's own webpage, Holyoke has an abundant amount of open space.
Yeah,
We
I
have
don't
very
care.
little developable space. We've got a problem right now supporting the city's infrastructure. The population's down by 20,000, all right? We need places where we can develop and bring in new housing. 50 acres out there, even if they were all 1 acre parcels, that'd be 50 more houses. They'd probably be in the $250,000 to $300,000 range, right? I don't know, that's a $5,000 tax bill on each house, times 50 houses, that's $250,000 a year, 2.5 million over the next 10 years. What, to collect 85?
You can only put
Hang on, let me.
three
I
houses
know,
in there.
You know,
That's it.
Also, and I will pull this out if it's necessary, there is a good deal of planning research now that tends to show that this kind of housing development does not pay a city for itself. It costs more in services to develop single-family luxury homes than you ever get back out of it. And, you know, there are economists who've looked at this. If there were a real conflict between bringing in more taxes for the city and making a profit and protecting this land, I think it would be a tougher call. But there's a lot of work out there showing that that doesn't happen. And under the circumstances,
if that's the
if
case,
who
the
makes
developer
money
wouldn't
is
be
the
looking at it.
Oh, no, the developer makes money.
Yeah.
So the only ones that are looking, there's no developers looking at it. There's a solar farm, there's a brewery, and that's about all that I've seen come forward actually looking to go out there. As-
Brewery.
There you go.
Now you're talking.
As far as
Careful, we're on TV, we're on TV, we don't wanna,
It's probably not zoned for that, and that's probably why they went the other way. But then, as far as housing that can actually go in there, the city says only 3 houses, if that. So that's all you can get in there. Because of the
streams, right?
150-foot frontage, stream, vernal pool,
Yeah.
and all uplands.
Watershed. Watershed would
Expensive
restrict it.
development.
And it's
like-
all on aquifer.
Rosemary, you said there's already a purchase and sale agreement, but that wasn't included in the
But
application.
it's coming.
Okay.
So a purchase and sale is coming, and an appraisal will be done in January. So the price, if it doesn't come in at the 160 is what they're actually offering the landowner, then the price will go down. So they never pay higher than the appraisal value. So it'll be legitimately appraised for what can be done there.
Oh, so it won't go
So
up?
right now, the city has them paying on a big development, and she never put it in chapter land, or they never put in chapter land, so it never got the tax breaks. So that's why she owes.
Why is she willing to sell it for such a low price?
She was actually asking lower than that
Oh,
because she's in back taxes.
okay.
So she's just trying to get clean with the city and get a little bit of profit
Yeah.
to have for her own life.
Yeah. Also, I think we should keep in mind this is the only open space project. There's the outdoor recreation one, but, there's
So-
not that many projects like this that.
And the other thing, as much as there's a lot of open space in Holyoke, A lot of it is owned by the water department, and it's not as accessible. There's a lot of open space, but we can't use it.
Doesn't the New England Trail abut the backside of this property, run
No,
right adjacent to it?
no, the New England Trail goes right behind my house, which is from Holyoke Community College to Mount Tom, so East Mountain.
It's on the other side.
But it's on the other side of that.
It's on the other side of East Mountain Road.
Yeah,
It's close.
I've hiked it all the way out
Yeah, it's
to
close, but it's not part of the New England Trail.
Appermont Highway.
Right.
Yeah.
So when so if you were going on Mountain Road, the New England Trail would be on Mountain Road running parallel. So this is on Rock Valley Road, so it's just to the left. So it's close, and so it supports the habitat for that whole area because of the just continuous movement of animals from one place to another. And this gives them another space to utilize and get them from East Mountain to Mount Tom to Southampton up to the hill towns.
Yes, which in turn helps support the value of the houses that are already there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So yeah, I'm still,
Well taken.
Okay.
I mean, that's the discussion, right?
Yeah.
Tax
No,
revenue versus
totally.
Open space.
And it's important to have that conversation.
And we'll probably hear a lot from the public when we put that out there.
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm still reviewing the information, but yeah, as you can probably tell, I do recommend it so far for the full request on the condition that we receive proof that Marcia Cassidy is the owner of the property and that there are no liens from the IRS on the property, and
The basics.
we get a formal appraisal, although maybe that's not needed with the assessment value by the city.
The appraisal's coming in, but
Okay.
it's not a requirement for CPA.
Okay. And then maybe we would want to also get an audit. Well, I don't know if we need an audit or financial report from Kestrel, since they're not, it would be the city buying this property, from what I understand, yeah. Okay. All right, so,
Once, everybody should remember, once Kestrel gets a land restriction on this, it's forever.
well,
Forget it.
anytime
Forget
you
it
acquire
forever.
open space with CPA, you need a CR. There's no other way to,
But the city owns it, and it's utilized for the public in order to get people outdoors.
Yes. And anyway, the point is to have it be permanent. It wouldn't be worth the investment if.
right, it wouldn't
if
be
you
worth the
protected.
investment of.
Well, the question is, do we need to spend more money on more open space in this
Yes.
town? When we've got the
I'd
Mount
say.
Tom, when we've got the Mount Tom Reservation, we've got.
You see how many
all the
cars are
we've got
parked there?
3 reservoirs.
It's overcrowded. You need more open space.
Oh, we need more parking.
I'd say you need more open space, but
Yeah.
Yes.
When I hiked
Beg to
that,
differ.
when I hiked that section of the trail, which was in the middle of summer, I didn't meet one other person. And a dozen times up to the Mount Tom Reservation this summer, there was never a line to get in. The picnic areas were empty.
well, people don't picnic anymore, unless you go to Hamden
It's
Ponds.
also- I walked that last week too,
You
and
know?
it's also beautiful.
And it's
Yes, it
beautiful.
is, of course.
And it's
And
beautiful,
underutilized.
You know?
And underutilized.
so, and we, we're about to spend $2 million on the Whiting Reservoir. And we're not gonna drive, it's basically so you can
You
walk
can
around
only
and ride a
walk
bike or-
around the Whiting Reservoir. You can't access any of the property
You can
there.
only walk around this property.
No, you can't. You can walk all of this property.
You
If
can
there's
walk
not a
all-
trail to walk, there's not a
But you
road to
can
walk.
I'm saying we've got abundant amounts of open space with the problems we have in the inner city, programs for youth and stuff like that, to lock up another $175,000 in more open space when we're not even utilizing all the open space we
So-
have.
Okay, so.
That's a good point.
Did you have
right,
something to
And that's
say,
a good
Amy?
point, and it's,
Yeah,
we'll
that's up
keep it
for
under
when it comes
discussion.
discussion.
We'll keep it under advisement and for future reference here as we go along, but,
Okay.
I think we should move along.
I
now.
agree.
All right. So I want to move on to the Richardson train station at 12 Bower Street. This is historic rehabilitation upon selection of a developer of the exterior facade, the roof, windows, masonry, exterior painting, and metalwork. And the applicant is Marcos Morera of the Holyoke Redevelopment Authority. so it's the city. And a co-applicant is James Lavelle of HG&E, Holyoke Gas and Electric. So they estimate the completion date, I don't think they gave a start for fiscal year 20. And the total request is for $150,000, which is 10% of what they estimate to be the total budget, which is over $1.5 million. So for the pros, I mean, I could go through that, or I could just jump to my recommendation. I don't know if I'm taking too long going through the pros and cons. Do you want me to just jump to my recommendation, or do you want me to go through what I've... Okay, pros and cons. Okay, so it seems to align with CPA goals. It's historic. It is a historic train station by a world-renowned, very influential architect, Richardson. I think it's the only train station he did in an urban area. It's the developer incentive can be effective. This was part of the 2012 Urban Renewal Plan. Once the work is done, an inspection would take place, after which the CPA funds would be provided. So they wouldn't get the money until after the work was done. After an inspection, too, to make sure everything's up to par. And the agreement they're proposing would include a reverter clause and performance requirements that work and permitting must start within 6 months of ownership, which would be completed in 2 years. And HG&E is basically giving it to the city, you know. The developer would have 60 to 90 days to do due diligence at the property, with a closing 30 days after. And once the developer has a specific design for the exterior of the property, they would seek approval from the Historic Commission. When the work is done, as I said, an inspection would take place and CPA funds would be provided. I think it would go to the applicant and then to the developer. Cons, there's really no time limit is specified for how long the HRA would have to find and secure a developer. Although there's no money would be distributed until the work is done and in a set time frame of 2 years and approved, the money would be tied up until that time. If the work does not meet the approval, or if the developer drops out due to lack of funds, the CPA money could be tied up as well for no reason. And I don't know, I had down here, there's no evidence of structural engineer evaluation of the building's condition. There are a lot of different parties involved: HG&E, the Holyoke Redevelopment Authority, the developer, and possibly the planning board for site plan review. So there's many unknown factors. So I recommend, you know, granting the requested funds for $150,000, but only on the condition that the applicants agree to a deadline of 60 days for the time to issue the RFP, and a deadline for no more than 6 months to secure a developer, and that the project is completed in 2 years and meets all requirements. All this has to be written into the contract, and no money should be awarded until after the work is done, contingent on meeting all the necessary standards. And this would protect the city's investment and not tie up the money for longer than necessary. Also, all questions would have to be answered to the satisfaction of the committee, and the contract must contain a preservation restriction on the appearance of the building to protect the city's investment too. And out of the three, this is the one that I would recommend more than the others. And just to kind of give you a preview, I feel like if you were going to fund one of those, that maybe this one over the other two. But I'm still learning more information about these applicants.
Yeah, I think that if the train station is done, that would be a great improvement to that area. And I think people would say, oh, that was a good thing. And they would, you know, be happy to see that their money was spent there to do that project. I mean, it would be, if we could, you know, now, do they have the full amount of the money to do it, or?
No, the whole point is,
it's gonna take time, so they'll probably keep coming back to us for more funding on this project?
Well, no, the point is that the developer will The idea is that they would put out a request for proposal and hope to attract a developer by mentioning, look, if you take this
Okay.
on, you will get
So
this
it's
amount of
another
money.
leverage. Okay.
So there is no, we don't know. That's the whole thing. We don't know if a developer could ever come up with that money. That's why there has to be time limits, as I see it.
Yeah, so they
This
would
is-
If money is
They
just,
just want this for leverage, they're not gonna do the stuff that they talk about for the 150,000. You know, this,
Yeah, no, this is a completely speculative thing.
Yes.
yeah, it is. Completely.
They've put this RFPs out on this several times already and gotten no response or no viable responses.
But they didn't have the
So-
incentive.
Right, so that's what this is,
Yeah.
yeah.
exactly what it's designed to do, all right?
My
Yeah.
question
Just-
would be if they have a sense of why they think a $150,000 incentive is going to change that reality so far.
Yeah, I would want to ask that too, and I'd want to know, have they had success with using developer incentives, you know?
Yeah, I would also really question the timeline because these things, historical redevelopment projects, and don't get me wrong, I love the Richardson train station.
Everybody does.
And I would love to see it brought back to life somehow. But I would want to ask for serious estimation of how long they actually expect this to take, because I can't imagine that we could actually get it done in those 60-day periods.
Well, no, you're right, and even if they got a
And,
developer in
yeah, we
6
still wouldn't know what the
in
project
6, yeah.
was, or,
Right. Even if they got a developer in 6 months, that doesn't mean that he's gonna do the project all, boom, and that's it, it's gonna be done. It could, he could take as long as he wants, for.
But they're saying it would have to be done
have to
in, I
make
think they're
sure.
saying it has to be done in
Right.
2 years. So there would definitely be a reverter clause or something that,
Perfect.
they
That's a good
wouldn't.
thing. That's
and
a-
one question to ask is whether, if we say that 2 years is the cutoff, it's even worth it to the Office of Planning and Economic Development. They may be completely unable to accommodate that. We should find out.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, I don't know what you mean.
Um,
Oh, you mean their
Just-
office,
yeah,
the
no, just-
HRA? They're a different
Oh,
office.
The Office of Planning and Economic Development, if we say you can have this on
They're not
offer for
involved.
somebody.
The Office of Plan, oh, sorry, they are, sorry. I was thinking of the other office. You're right. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let us say, just whoever in the city, whether it is HEDIC or the Redevelopment Authority or Planning and Economic Development is managing this, they will need to put out the proposal, evaluate the results. The developer will then have to do their due diligence, decide whether they can really do it. And, I may be being more pessimistic than I would like to be here, but I have seen projects before the planning board that rely on any kind of public funding come in for site plan review, and 3 years later, their approval is about to expire, and they're coming back for an extension from us because, with the best will in the world, they have had funding deadlines slip, they've had an architect drop out. It's not anybody's fault, but there are problems with a project this big, and it just takes a long time. And my question would be, and I'm sure that the people overseeing this can answer it better than I can, is if, in order to protect the city's investment and the taxpayer dollars going into CPA, we need to say, you have this committed and you have a project with shovel and ground in 2 years. Are we just wasting their time? Would we be pulling funding before it could do any good?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And, I don't
It's
know
not
what the answer
realistic.
is. This is just something that I think is worth finding out,
That's
or
what the
trying to.
2-year I think that's what the 2-year reverter, if they are.
But you're saying it's not realistic, maybe.
I'm saying that 2 years may not be realistic, and if 2 years isn't realistic,
Well, then we can.
are we
can-
comfortable with that?
Yeah, because then you're basically encumbering this money for that period, and they might say, well, we haven't been able to do anything, and then you could get, you never gave the money, but you could have used it for something else. That's
Yeah, there are opportunity costs.
Right,
And we can see that in one of the projects coming right up here.
yeah.
And does anybody have a sense, to me, I'm for this project, but for
Yeah.
$150,000, that's peanuts. I would almost double it if you want to get somebody's serious attention. For a developer, 150 is, so what, it's coffee.
Well, that's something we can talk to them about when they come in.
Well, you could do that.
Really,
You could.
I'm for it, and I hope it comes to fruition. It certainly is a rose that would bloom. But I would make it I'd make it $250,000 to really get a serious investor to say, look, we really want you to go with this, and, well, that's my own opinion. I mean, you guys,
Well, that's a good suggestion you can make to them.
Well, I think we love this project and we have questions.
Right.
If, this much I can tell you, because I've been through the train station, all right, I've walked through it. If we don't do something almost immediately, and maybe even a year or two ago, the roof is leaking.
Yeah.
And that's a slate roof, and once that starts to let go, you can kiss the whole building goodbye.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
how much is the roof?
Well, which makes for another set of
37,000.
questions, which is, do we want to ask for some proposal that gives us a chance of emergency intervention, as opposed to a proposal that just is
See,
like,
yeah, and this is what I don't
Oh,
understand.
that's a good point.
They're saying that they want the 150,000 for the roof, windows, facade, masonry, blah, blah, blah. Well, they should do this.
Right,
They
I
should do
agree.
these
Because-
projects and then offer it to a developer.
Oh,
So
that's
why
a
don't
good
we
point.
suggest to them, they've got
That-
time
yeah,
to
That
come
would
back,
make,
That's a good idea.
that would make
revise
more
this.
sense, you know?
Even if, we ought to put 150 or 250 into this building, even if we do nothing but mothball it, looking
Well,
for a
if it needs a
developer
new
for
roof,
10 years
there's a
from
good
now.
start.
Because
Yeah,
that
right.
won't
Yeah.
be, it will not be here
But
10 years
those,
from now.
those things should be
yeah,
done.
yeah, and these are not
So
things that
instead
should
of
wait
an
around.
incentive,
It should just be HG&E applying for 150,000 or whatever the number is
to do, to
to button
To
up
maintain
building.
the
to button it
building.
up.
yes,
And
to
if
make
they,
it more attractive.
and if they wanted to come back and late file that application, I would support the late file.
I
Ah,
agree.
I'm with you.
It's easy to modify this. I mean, and then, right, you're not dependent on an RFP process finding a
Right.
developer, and the developer's not looking at, okay, what are these incentives? The building's already been improved.
Right.
He's
Yep.
sitting on, the roof is buttoned up, not,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do this.
Right.
You know, and we may need to consider some type of restriction if nobody comes forward and HG&E decides to put their own offices in there or something.
Right.
They might need to pay this back if they land out keeping it.
Yeah, but making sure that it doesn't deteriorate and
It's,
become
you know,
valuable.
Right.
Preserving it.
Yeah,
See why?
Yeah,
Preserving it.
It's,
Yeah.
it's,
As long as
It's-
it's being used.
I agree, yeah.
yeah.
As long as it's
It's
being
still,
used, who
it's still,
cares?
it's
It's
still
being
good.
used? How?
Yeah, no, we're talking
Somebody-
about if the
Oh.
HG&E put their
Anybody.
offices in there,
Oh.
that would be a problem, but if, as
not a
long as they're
problem.
using it, it's,
But your idea is interesting, because if the roof could be fixed and, you know, the structure stabilized, and then they came back and, you know, I don't know, wanted to do the developer thing, maybe a developer would be even more interested, because
I agree.
already it's
Yeah,
in better shape.
exactly.
Yeah.
That I think we can all agree.
Because I've
on.
walked
Yeah.
through it,
Yeah.
and it's definitely in demise.
Yeah.
Yep.
okay, good. Well,
Consensus.
Let
I
them
love it.
know
Are
that,
you all
that's what
set?
we're looking
Be a
for,
very good
and
steward.
We still have more projects.
let them
No, I
know
mean, with
that,
this particular project, you.
Oh,
But I was just have a question for,
Oh, yeah.
Kip. Were you saying that you think it would be I mean, wouldn't the HRA still be overseeing the repairs?
HG&E owns it.
But I don't think,
Yes,
let's
they
see.
own it.
But they're not the applicant, really. Well, let's see.
Yeah, well, that's
They
why
can
I was
fill out.
talking
They could
about,
be.
But they could be
They
the
could be.
applicant.
that's why I talked about doing a late file.
See, James
But
LaBelle
what's
is
a
the,
wait file? I don't
he's
know.
the
Co-applicant.
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 Just refiling and making a new application at somewhat of a later date, if you will.
Oh,
The
okay.
redevelopment authorities.
Oh, they're a co-applicant, okay.
Yeah, so
But Jim,
just,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
they can be the applicant.
they can be, but
But it doesn't matter
they
either
don't agree
way.
to
Right.
that, yeah.
Just change up the
If that's
focus.
a problem, then
Yeah.
they can go to the HRA.
In other words, go spend the money and fix
And
the
do it,
roof.
yeah.
There's the incentive for
The
the
incentive
developer.
is before your eyes, not as a dream.
Yeah, and then it would be tangible, the public would see
Absolutely.
a positive change
Then
without
after a year or
waiting.
two, God willing, if we have more money, give them another $1.50
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
for the developer.
so this is ongoing in hopes of getting somebody who goes in there to do something.
it's-
Immediate need and a somewhat
Exactly.
long-range
I mean-
need, if you
What
will.
that guarantees is it'll be a year, not just this winter, but probably next winter with leaky roof.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
this is just a ridiculously
years. It
round the
could be
barn
2
way of
years.
getting what needs to be done. We should just do it.
These are the cards that have been dealt, so let's run with it.
Well, so we're
we
working
can
it out
make
as
a
we go.
recommendation.
So when you get into this historic preservation also, that's Munson slate, right?
Yeah, so,
You can't just go to a quarry, order some slate, then you're not doing a historic job on it. Just, you know, it's kind of sad, but all the slate that just went to the ground come off of Mater Dolorosa was Munson slate also. But just that goodbye, but.
And all the beautiful stuff inside.
Madam Chairman, do we have an instructions for Amy to ask Jim Lavelle to reapply?
To bring them our concerns and what our suggestions might be at this point.
That the Hoyle Gas and Electric should file a request for $150,000 for the immediate need, and digest that as a proposal. Then a year or two from now, go back, if they so choose, and for another $150.
Well,
Or whatever they choose.
Well, and presumably, we should also communicate with the current applicant and say that we are suggesting that this application be substantially revised because we want to do the preservation work. We don't want to wait around for some developer to come in with a proposal.
I think Marcos will get the message
Yes.
quick. Yeah,
Yes.
he'll know
Yeah,
what to-
So what I'm
it's a
confused about,
preservation-
though, is,
So the application is a preservation application.
well, but the word preservation in the legal terms, it doesn't, it's
Okay.
better to stay away from that word. It's rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation, excuse me.
From what yeah. But what I'm confused about, because it seems like, I mean, this application was prepared by Marcos Morera's office. So, you know, they're kind of the ones that laid this out, so.
Well, he can still be the applicant.
Yeah.
It's just the focus of it, instead of having it be long-term, is using the money to actually do the roof or whatever they can do with $150,000 to make it more.
Yeah.
Make,
Well, I think that, you know,
Make
like
the
on the
building-
timeline that I shared in one of the meetings, I said it would be, if people can write down questions and email them to me by January 7th, that would be great. And this could be one of them that I could say, you know, that this is the suggestion from the CPC, you know,
Right.
whether it comes from you or from HG&E.
I suspect that, yes, Marcos
So
will
who's
get the
going
message.
to, who is going to send her that?
Well, I want I'm hoping all the committee members will
Well, you
just
don't
make
want
up questions.
7 different
Well, I would
versions
consolidate.
of that
I would
question.
consolidate the questions, so if I see you're all asking the same question, you know, I would just make a list and I would send emails directly to each applicant based on your questions.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm also attempting to capture the questions that I'm hearing in the.
Okay, great.
Yes, you take the best
Okay.
notes.
And I'm gonna give the applicants a deadline for responding, you know, so we can kind of keep this moving, I'm hoping, you know.
Even though it's
They should.
unofficial, we could also send them out to the committee so folks can see, was my question put forward in the notes? Or if it wasn't, or here's a way I'd like to phrase the question differently, folks can then put out how they would like it to be asked.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
your
so
notes
just-
really are an amazing resource, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But if everybody can just sort of make a note of what questions they have and be sure to email that to me. I can remind you to do that, but,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so, let's see. Okay, 123 Pine Street, or otherwise known as the Alpine Apartments. It's an 8-unit apartment. This is also from the same applicant, but actually, it's just Marcos Morera, Holyoke Redevelopment Authority, not the, not HG&E. So this is a project for historic rehabilitation and maybe the creation of affordable housing. That's what I'm not sure about. I think the apartment is vacant. It's 8 units. It's surrounded by 2 empty lots. They want the project to be to fix the roof, windows, facade, masonry, exterior painting. Wait, I feel like I read the same thing for the other one. Let me just see.
Yeah, it is. It's the same thing.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, it basically is the same format as the last one.
It's different.
Right.
And I
Okay,
had
maybe it was the
already-
same thing, okay.
Well, it's not exactly the same, but I'd already
Yeah.
talked to
I think-
Amy
Right.
to some
Yeah, it must
extent
be.
about these questions, you know, because what struck me is, you know, as with the other one, it's a very loose budget. You know, we don't have any detail that would suggest that anybody's thought about what it would really cost to do this
Yes,
work.
Right.
exactly.
And it also is another one of these, well, we'll offer it to a developer in the hopes that one will emerge via the RFP process, which, you know, it is, I mean, this troubles me because it's speculative. You know, we are tying up money if we fund things in this format without any guarantee that anything will ever come of it. And we don't know, because of the looseness of the budgets, whether the amounts requested are even plausible or realistic. So, I would want to know a lot more about how this was going to work before I thought we could recommend funding it.
Right.
And, it may be that we've got 3 of these, they're all for substantial amounts of money. We were all very enthusiastic about one of them and have already basically rewritten it for the applicant while we were sitting here. I don't know that this is susceptible to the same kind of rewriting, but, it suffers from the same problems, and I just don't know what to do about it except to gather more information and see. And if we run out of money before we get there, well, maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, so the estimated completion date, again, is in 2020, upon selection of the developer. So yeah, there's a lot of speculative parts to this, and the request is again for $150,000, which is 10% of $1.5 million. And the pros are it aligns with CPA goals in terms of restoring existing historic buildings and creating affordable housing. However, it appears that this building might already be affordable housing, so I'm not sure if money can be taken out of that revenue, out of that reserve. And it was mentioned, in the Historic Preservation Plan, which was approved by City Council in 2012. It got support. It was in the Urban Renewal Plan. The cons, as I see it, are the building is in terrible condition. There's also asbestos. It seems like a gamble not knowing the true difficulties and the cost of the rehabilitation of this property or how the final project will pan out. The rents for the 8 units won't support the total cost of the project.
That's
talked-
all the case in all the buildings
And
that need to be done.
They were awarded money through the Office of Community Development, but the timing didn't work out. I'm not sure what happened. The budget is, like as Mimi says, very approximate with few actual quotes. So I'm not sure about this one, and I would would want further information before I could make a recommendation either way. And since they applied for the 3 developer incentive-oriented projects, as I said before, if you were going to go that route, it would probably be best to focus on one rather than all 3, since there's no guarantee that any of them come to fruition. And it wouldn't be a good idea to tie up the city's money, especially not for the first funding cycle. Let's see. So I think that if you were to award money to this, it would have to be, again, on the condition that the applicants agree to a very strict deadline of 60 days for the time to issue the request for proposal and a deadline of no more than 6 months to secure the developer, and that the project is completed in 2 years and meets all the requirements, and all of that would have to be written into the contract. And no money should be awarded until after the work is done, contingent on meeting all the standards, and this would protect the city's investment. Also, they'd have to answer questions about, to the committee's satisfaction, and the contract would have to contain the preservation restriction on the appearance of the building.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building, but I wonder whether we, again, maybe come up with some other model to try to save these buildings, because I don't know, maybe the RFP developer incentive has been effective in the past, but it seems like a really, unfocused kind of approach to the problem.
Do we know if it has been successful in the past?
Yeah, I'd like to find out.
I know that that the head of the Office of Community Development is a proponent of developer incentives. So maybe she's seen that they worked at times. So I can say that. So
Myself, this one here, I have 0 support for. It's marked as historic preservation. That's just a cover story. This is for housing. This is for affordable housing. It's not for historic preservation. That's number one. And if you really do use this for historic preservation, you're going to spend, to do it properly, historic preservation, you're going to spend millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to put in affordable housing. You might as well just tear it down and put in real affordable housing, which I don't think is appropriate right now either. But this, to do this is just a waste of money. We have so many other truly historic, significant, cultural significant projects that need funding around the city. This isn't one of them.
I agree.
So you're not saying that you don't think it's of historic significance, but just that you think that it's not a priority?
Everything in this town is of historic
Yeah,
significance.
okay.
We gotta pick.
That's true.
It's the fight we just went through on a couple of other buildings. We gotta pick and choose the ones
Yeah.
we can really do and focus in on them. We face it, we can't save everything that's crumbling around us in this town. And to throw pennies all over the place, we gotta throw some serious money at a few serious projects. And I just don't feel this is one of them.
I agree.
You raise an
Throw-
interesting point, like the
So that's-
incremental cost of getting a historic designation on the property and having to deal with those restrictions may far exceed the $150,000 from the CPA that would push them into that
Yeah,
classification, right?
right.
Well, it's been interesting seeing a number of applicants who have come forward specifically around exterior. That you don't need to say that you are classifying your building 100% as historic rehabilitation, but saying you will
You should
preserve just the
Give her
exterior.
a microphone if she's gonna be talking. It has to be recorded.
Well, there's only
You have to be recorded.
My point was just that you can say, an applicant can say, we're just saying that we're trying to rehabilitate the exterior of the building, and thus it still falls underneath the guidelines from the Department of the Interior. Doesn't have to necessarily say 100% of our building will be historically rehabilitated. And a number of our applicants have gone that route.
That is,
The net result is what?
that,
What you're left with.
that is totally, that is correct. We have a program in Holyoke for facade improvement, and nobody applied for it the last 2 years through CDBG. And I think the chamber and city funding, and nobody even applied for it.
wow.
So there's other monies available for if you're talking about just historic facades. All they gotta do is apply for it.
So we could make a recommendation to them that there's other sources of funding.
Well,
They're presumably aware of it, unlike many
We'll
individual
have to let them
homeowners.
come in and answer
Yeah.
all the
It seems
questions.
it's
Yeah.
the cart before the horse, right? Like, go
Yeah.
out, get a developer, come in with a purchase and sale agreement, and we have this funding gap well identified. Maybe this qualifies for CPA funds, but
Yeah.
this seems
Yeah.
to be too
A bridge too far.
speculative, to tie up the money and to
Right,
keep
when
it
there's
away
other
from
projects that are,
worthy projects,
Yes.
being able to fund other worthy
Mm-hmm.
projects, and this, not that this isn't, just seems premature, right? It seems like it
Yeah.
is not ready to be funded.
Yeah, I would feel much more comfortable if we secretly knew that there was somebody out there who was ready to sign the contract the instant that they knew they could secure funds. But I assume that if there were any such person, we would be seeing them. You know, they would at least
No,
be
there's
coming
no
in and
person.
saying, I'm a party in interest, and,
Okay. That's good. I think we
yeah.
covered this one and
Okay, so the Armory, the last of these three. This is even more speculative. It's a pre-development fund for historic preservation and possibly affordable housing. To start May 2019, the actual rehab work would, I think they've said, could take 5 to 7 years. But they also said the estimated completion is October 2020, so I'm a little confused by that. And the pre-development funding, let's see, is for architectural and engineering services, environmental and subsurface feasibility studies to investigate the market for supportive housing or alternative uses, title examination, zoning opinions, necessary to engage support of lending and funding sources for what seems to be a very huge, expensive project. The money would incentivize development of the Armory. They're saying one of the city's priority endangered properties, The building is in poor condition. The rear portion collapsed. The vision they have, or that they do have a developer in mind in this case. The co-applicant is actually the proposed developer, Michael Moriarty of One Holyoke CDC, and his vision is to make it into U.S. military veteran senior housing, or turn it into 40 to 50 units for people ages 55 and up. So anyway, the pros, as I see it, are, the vision would be great, restoring the Armory. It's a Holyoke icon for senior veteran housing. If realized, it would be a great benefit to the city. And the pre-development timeline would be quick, 6 months, May of 2019 to October 2019. The design would be approved by Holyoke Historic Commission prior to receiving funds, and they do have this interested developer, Michael Moriarty, I can't say his name, Moriarty of One Holyoke CDC. Now the cons, funding a pre-development activities for the CPA's first funding cycle wouldn't materialize in any visible way for the public to see. There'd be no tangible proof that public money has gone towards something to improve the city. That's the biggest con as I see it. There's no guarantee that the rest of the project will pan out in a way that meets the requirements, because I think you do these studies to find out if this would work and what if it doesn't. And the construction begins after they get the pre-development money, I think. There's no guarantee that as I said, that the feasibility studies would show this as a viable project. And the fact that the building's rear portion collapsed, the stairwell collapsed, there's so much uncertainty even about the stability of the current structure.
Yeah, I think they're not even looking to preserve that. They just want to preserve the facade.
More the facade, and really creating a whole new building with the money behind the facade, which would cost $9 to $11 million. And the first private developer who bought it in 2004 abandoned it, and the city foreclosed on it, that owner, for non-payment of taxes. So I'm just wondering, why should we think that another developer won't do the same, especially now that the rear portion of the building has collapsed. And the feasibility even of doing the steps they're proposing requires many steps, and approvals. So.
Yeah, this is one where we're really being asked to spend $150,000 purely to see whether any further steps along this road are possible.
Exactly.
And that's awfully speculative.
So I have a lot of qualms about this project, particularly because, as I said, this is CPA's first funding cycle, and the public will probably want to see that their taxpayer money is going, may not want to see. They want to see where it's going, towards something visible rather than something so theoretical. And I also think there are a lot of unknown factors in the project. And I just think probably one of these projects rather than all three would be the best idea.
One good one.
Well, I'll help you, because this one I've also walked through as it was collapsing. The back section has been cleaned up, and it's almost a totally separate structure than the front piece of the building. The front piece, it does need roof work. It needs some pointing. There's some interior staircases that need some work, and some flooring that needs to be shored up. But much the same as the train station, we could come back and we could say, use the money, do this work, not for trying to attract. I mean, what's going to attract somebody is to stabilize the structure that exists there, as opposed to the Alpine building. This one here, you've got the senior center right to the left of it. And if it's going to be for senior veteran housing, boy, what a perfect match. You've got the bank, just built a brand new building right there. You've got the Yankee Peddler building that just moved right on the back side of that lot. And you've got all the people now in the, it's not the Oak Hill Homes is what I've learned they call that part of the Churchill development, where they've actually taken ownership. And this is a section of the community that is, I feel, is in transition, and really fighting a battle there, against blight. So this is one where I think if we,
It fits.
similar to the train station, if the funds were directed to do certain work, not studies, but to secure the building, to come back to them. And whether it's for Holyoke One CDC or for anybody,
So we
it
would
would be
need-
well worth it. This is a really historic structure. Inside of it also, there's some historic markers also. We've tried to have them removed. Moving them would probably destroy them. They're in memorial of Hoyokers who lost their lives in the Spanish-American War and served in the Spanish-American War. So it is a pretty historically significant building.
So what we would need presumably is a solid, detailed budget for what could be done to mothball it.
I'm wondering if and, you know, the committee will have to decide this, can we have people come in, the ones we have real questions about and concerns, especially the last couple that we've discussed, have them come in now and talk to them about all of this?
Well,
We don't have to
that's
have a
on the,
public-
that's on the list, yeah, that's.
We don't have to have a public hearing. And when we do the public hearing, those are the ones we're gonna recommend, for sure. That's when we come to our decision and say, well, these are the ones we wanna do. That's when we have the public hearing, right? We don't have to
No.
do,
I think we
can
have,
have these people come in and
Yeah,
talk
we
to
have
us.
that on the schedule that I proposed, so, that, you know, I consolidate your questions, email them, and they respond by January 22nd, and then the meeting with applicants, I thought, would be between January 28th and December 1st.
So,
Wait.
but on.
That makes
on-
no sense,
No,
sorry.
that doesn't
I
make
mean,
sense.
February, sorry. I just,
But
nobody
isn't
caught.
that a little bit late? I mean,
February.
that's too
So
far.
First.
Because on some
Yeah.
of these, we have questions now,
Yeah.
so maybe clarification on the few that we
That we have.
have questions on that maybe just.
Yeah,
one
I
night we
said
had
submit your
those three
questions
come-
January 7th, I'll send it to them, then they have to reply by a certain amount of time.
Maybe they
About
should
just have
come
them come
in
in.
rather than
Oh.
reply.
You don't want to do the emails, you just want them to come in.
I would, yeah, for the ones that we have a lot of questions about here, the ones that we've been, the last couple ones especially.
Give them credit for being creative, looking for funding for
Yeah.
trying to do
Absolutely.
these
Oh,
things.
yeah, absolutely.
And if we can point them in a good direction.
And maybe they can sway us that this is the right way to
Yeah, they
spend
may
this
have
money.
reasons for this way that they're going about it, yeah.
Oh, especially this
Ex-
one with the final goal of providing housing for veterans.
I
That's
love
such a
it,
big
yeah.
need, like, it would be
And
great
it's in
to
the
listen.
perfect
So I think
area.
your suggestion is a good one, to engage in a conversation about this type of
Bring them in,
project
yeah.
and what's our concern. I think it would be difficult to do it in writing. There's a lot of moving
Yeah,
parts and
exactly.
to understand.
I,
Because, I mean, I would question the, you know, an $11 million budget. I mean, is this viable at all for any kind of a developer to come in and put
Yeah.
in?
Holyoke,
And I don't know, I'm
yeah,
just.
they've got a good track record.
Oh,
They've
yeah.
got, yeah, they've got a good track record, so.
Right. But that's what I would want to ask them. Do they have the funding? Do they have that $11 million now? If we give the part that we're going to do they have the rest? You know, and I want to know that.
I agree, that's why I'd like to see, it was Marcos was the, bring it back with a little, a twist like the train station. But do something, so even if it's not one CDC, maybe, now you've got a bank right there, you got the senior center, I mean, it'd be nice for veterans housing, but maybe with it secure, maybe somebody does want to put some kind of a business in there.
yeah.
I hate to throw water on everybody, I just feel that time has passed it by. And the train station is one thing, but the armory is the armory. To have any developer to very imaginatively try to reconfigure that for anything with that existing structure right there is really a stretch. And I think, I hate to say this, but I think we're throwing good money after bad. I don't think that structure is that historically significant as the railroad station to merit saving it, quite frankly. I think time has passed it by. I would rather see it emptied and have a vacant lot and say to a developer, do you want to put in certain houses, or 2 or 3 houses, or whatever the case may be. I just don't see it,
So, but at this point, before we yay or nay it, we're just looking to get more information.
I know, but still, that's, even with more information, I don't think you're gonna redeem it, it's still the same
But
thing.
it doesn't, but that doesn't matter, as long as we get the information, and
Okay.
then if we vote yay or nay, then we've at least, searched out.
No, I
the
mean,
questions
fine.
and answers we're trying to solve.
I just think it's, time has passed it by,
So,
unfortunately.
so if we were gonna do, which ones would you consider having them come in before, rather than us emailing back and forth and trying to get information?
No,
So this one is a good one?
Can I just explain that the email, that came from another community, the way that they do
Right,
it?
right,
And basically, the idea was that I would take all your questions, maybe from the notes, from whatever you send me, and I would draft something. So if there were certain documents you needed to see for, the applications or something like that, or,
But this is really changing
so
the
it wouldn't be
focus.
just everybody randomly emailing.
But, yeah, but this isn't saying we need.
No, I
this
know.
document
In terms of this, I understand what you mean.
Right, and in terms of the railroad station, and there might have been another one, I'm not sure.
123
And
Alpine.
123 Pine.
So maybe we should, after we go through this, we could discuss a time and to arrange for
Right.
them to come in and talk to us. Or maybe that
Especially
should
these
happen
last-
January 7th instead of emailing.
Right,
Especially the last 3 that we,
Yeah,
the
I think that's.
Okay.
Marcus Marrero projects, yes, I
Yeah.
would like him.
we still have more to go
No,
through.
I know, I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, shall we keep going?
Please.
Okay. Okay, Victory Theater. Yeah, I think we have like
Oh, God.
3 more. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's roll.
Victory Theater, historic rehabilitation of the Victory Theater, and the goal is to restore and reopen the theater as a performance venue by 2020. But they put construction to begin summer of 2019. So they have described the work as a restoration of its historic elements, the murals, seating, replacing the seating, wall treatment, historic lighting fixtures, the historic signage, like the marquee, the blade, and the wall painting sign about air conditioning. And the applicant is MIFA, I forget what it stands for, but I think you,
Massachusetts Institute for Fine Arts, I believe.
sounds right, yeah. Donald Sanders is the applicant. They own this, and they basically, this application is more like their overall application for the entire project, even though they're requesting 100,000, and they would like to request it per year over 3 years with a total of 300,000. It didn't seem like this application was specific to this funding, but something that,
Yeah,
been
and this is, I think, a tough case in that, for one thing, if we do anything with the Victory Theater, because it was extremely controversial at our public hearing, I, for one, would want to see, I don't know, many, many years of audited financial statements,
Yeah,
because there's a
me
lot of
too.
money that has come into that project. We don't know where most of it's gone. We know that they're asking for what is quite a lot of money for the committee, but is a drop in the bucket compared to what, the $47 million price tag on this thing now?
yeah.
And it just, I understand maybe the appeal of offering them, $1,000 a year so that they can say they have CPA support when they go out to other granting authorities. But, my impulse as I read this was that they are both, asking us for too much and too little. It's more than we have to give them, and it won't do them any good.
Yeah, and Kathy McKean did say that part of her motivation is to get CPA support, that it would
It would
be
help
good.
for level.
Would help, well, also just
Yeah,
to
be
show
able to say
that they
that-
have CPA support would garner more support from the public. But I don't know if that's, necessarily the way you want to spend the money, but if it were a smaller amount, But anyway, as I see, the pros are the vision, if realized, which is a big if, would be of benefit to the city, because there's no venue of this size capable of hosting such a large-scale production in the area, like a Broadway play. And it's mentioned in the CPA plan, but you're telling me that was controversial. And The cons are, yeah, I don't see a clear explanation of what's been done, just like Mimi says, with all the funding so far. It's 19 years since 2009. I think there was 1.2 million from Holyoke, 3.8 from individual corporations and foundations, and 13 million from the state. So it's unclear exactly what this particular chunk of money would be spent for. Even though, you know, they listed these things, I just feel like it's just this huge, vast project that I don't really
the roof
know.
was done.
What?
They did do the roof with.
Oh, okay. Because they didn't really go into what they did.
Yeah, no, I feel particularly sensitive about this because when we had our public hearings and we were all dispersed among those tables, I wound up with a table of 8 people who jumped on me the instant its name came up and were all, not a penny for the Victory Theater. Now, you write that down, miss. And they were fierce, so I feel like I need to pass the message
Can't
along.
say as I blame
the
them. I can't say as I
application-
blame them.
The application does have many letters of support, but some of them are old. So I don't know if, you know, now people feel the same as they did.
Well, I'm sure
initially.
many people also really love this and want to see it go
Well,
forward.
everybody wants to see it done. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, the
47
longer they
million.
wait, the more it costs.
I mean, 47 million. I mean, we all want it, but for other than the 47 million, I mean, fine.
Yeah, also
But who's
the,
going to get the money?
the application says, describes the work as repairing the murals, but it also mentions in the application that the murals should be removed and are faded beyond repair. So that was a little perplexing to me, if they're saying that some of the money will go towards the murals.
Yeah, this is sort of thing is why I think you would need an independent engineering study. I don't know whether anyone has been done, but you know, I would want an independent expert to let us know what could be done and what needed to be done. And you know, if it all panned out, it's a great project. I
They
just
do
think there
have
are a
an
lot of
existing
questions.
conditions attachment.
What's the date out of it, Amy?
I don't have it with me right now, so I'll look that up.
Well,
Okay,
If
well, we'll have them come in and answer
Yeah.
these questions
Yeah.
for us.
So, and also I don't know how they would handle ADA requirements, because they say that's something that has to be interpreted. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, for the record, I'm recusing myself from any discussion about the Victory Theater.
The date on it, Mike, is 9/5/2017 for the condition sheet.
Does it mention who did that particular report on the current conditions?
United States Department of the Interior National Park Service, right at the top. Is that what it is? Right here?
Yeah, I'm not sure that this is a real, I mean, this is what we were talking about.
It's on the
This
last
is,
page of the
like,
packet.
the rehab,
I was thinking like something like if you would have like Ty and Bond, and you had a group of engineers go walk through the place and do a detailed analysis of the structural characteristics, the
yeah,
plot,
this
everything.
seems to be more what they would require in order for it to meet historical restoration standards.
Yeah.
Nothing about the
Right,
actual
exactly.
condition.
That's right.
Well, this is the thing about
Oh, we
the
got a lot of questions. for
Yeah.
this group.
Yeah.
funding for this are all tied up with, in other words, they're not gonna get any of this funding unless they have all the funding ready to go. The other funding, it doesn't kick in. They can't do it in phases.
So that's probably why they haven't done anything, or
Right,
besides the
exactly.
roof, because they need all the money.
They need all the money
Yeah.
to get access to what's been offered to them already, all their tax credits,
Yeah, but
whatever.
they've raised
So-
significant money over the years.
They have.
But they can't
I
access
mean,
it.
they've had fundraisers.
Yeah.
Presumably, the fundraisers, you know, people bring cash to those.
but I'm doing this from memory. When they originally started raising money, it was for 25 million to redo the theater.
I know.
Now it's 47
I
million.
know, and if we wait.
And if we keep on raising money,
But
this to me seems like a dog chasing its own tail.
You'll never
You
catch
bring
up.
up a good point about having an independent, would we be willing to fund an independent, whatever you call, what is it?
I think that
Somebody
should
to
be
go in
their
there and tell us
inspection?
No.
if it's worth doing
No,
or not.
not us.
Only because
I don't
they
know
don't.
that we can.
Obviously, they
We
don't have the
can't.
money,
We
they don't have the money to do that, because they can't access their funds. So if, would we be willing to if they came in and said, okay, then we want to change this and we want to, we'll get an independent review done on whether this project
I-
is worth doing, and answer that question once and for all before we
I would
move
like to
forward.
see financial statements, because it seems to me they're spending money. Don't they have people on salary?
Well, yeah, I guess, yes, but they
mean-
do
But they're-
get state, it's the Massachusetts Institute, so
So
they get
it's-
state money to
But
pay their salaries.
they've had a projected opening, now it's December of 2020. I don't know how many projected openings they missed.
Oh,
I don't
no.
believe
Exactly.
that for 2 seconds.
Yeah,
We got.
We have a lot of questions.
We have a
Est-
lot of questions.
Estimated 37 events.
I just want to mention, oh, sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna give them $100,000 a year, and it will generate $127,000 in city revenue. Ooh. We're gonna put in $100,000, it'll generate $127,000 in city revenue.
Someday.
Someday, maybe.
That's never,
So,
I just want to,
There's definitely a lot of
and by the,
questions on this.
and
Yeah.
just by the way, these figures are according to the Arts and Economic Prosperity Calculator, designed for the Americans for the Arts. Sounds a little,
Amy.
I just want to mention that, say you just go ahead with meeting this applicant, like you're talking about. I think it would be helpful to them if they knew what sort of things you're going to be requiring of them, which is why I suggested the email. Because if you want an inspection report, whatever it is, you know, they'd have the heads up to be more prepared, and the meeting could be more productive. So that's my thought about.
That's a good idea.
Right, although
Doing
we
the
can't possibly email you everything, but it would be a
But we
good,
could give
it
her
would be a
some-
good start.
And Megan's got a
Well,
lot of the
you know.
notes, which is what you
Right,
can
I'll
work
be
off of,
developing
yeah.
questions, you know, but I'm just saying that could, you know, you obviously
No, I
have
agree.
questions and concerns that would be good for them to prepare. That's all.
Right,
Absolutely, and come with the information.
Right.
exactly, okay.
Um,
So keep that in mind, everyone. Do your diligence on
If you want to
email.
do that sooner than January 7th to get the ball rolling.
Probably not.
Okay, probably
Because of
not,
the
okay.
holidays, it's
Yeah,
just not gonna
that's-
happen.
Okay, I understand. All right, so the next one is the Valley Opportunity Council historic rehabilitation of 2 apartment buildings with 36 units total, and it's occupied by low-income families. Or it's the same as the Fosse de Esperanza.
right.
And one of the buildings is at 348 Chestnut Street, which I guess is the same as 4852 Franklin, which must be at, you know,
Oh,
the perpendicular street. That's one building with 28 units. And the other is 337 Chestnut, which has only 8 units. So they did lay out some detailed work to do with both buildings. They continued to talk about kitchen and bathroom upgrades, even though I had said in the eligibility letter that that wasn't eligible for CPA funding, that wasn't acquired, affordable housing that wasn't acquired through. I mean, maybe it could be eligible if it's historic, but one thing I found out, let's see, oh, maybe that's a different one. Oh, yeah, that one of them is not historic. 337 Chestnut Street was built in 1999. So maybe that part could be funding for affordable housing, because what they're asking for is $100,000, $50,000 for out of the historic and $50,000 for housing. But the application isn't really that clear or about how one is historic and one is really, doesn't seem to be
They'd have to use the historic part on the
historically
outside,
significant.
and the other part in the inside. Right?
Well, I have to find out, well, the thing is, if the upgrades are in the non-historic building, as I think, I don't think that that's let me see what I have here. All right, let me just go through what I had. The pros I had are the Franklin building received Massachusetts Historic credits, 100,000, so sounds like that is historic. And the second building may qualify for CPA funding under affordable housing support, is what I'm thinking. But it's not an old building, and I don't know if it has some, I doubt it has historic significance. The cons are, according to the city tax collector, Valley Opportunity Council owes money. They have an outstanding real estate bill to the city for 181 Elm Street. That's a property they own. So from what I understand, talking to Alicia Zoller, she said they would have to sign up for a payment plan to the city to pay the second quarter bill.
How much do they owe?
I don't have the amount that they owe, but the budget did mention a perm debt. I don't know if this is for $675,000 and net of soft debt to be refinanced. I'm not sure what all that means. I don't. So I can try to find out what amount is owed. So it's not clear which costs will be covered by the requested funding. Yeah, that, as I said, one was constructed in 1999. And even the one that's historic doesn't yet have historic significance status. It's sort of, they said it, the National Park Service says it appears to meet the National Register criteria for evaluation and will likely be listed, but that doesn't really qualify it.
Well, appears and likely are two scary words.
But the fact that they got MHC historic tax credits, you would think that they had to prove that they were historic. But maybe the bar is lower, I don't know, than for CPA, which requires either the local commission to say it's historic or it has to be on the national or state register. Yeah, so as I said, the maintenance repair work doesn't qualify, I don't think, under CPA affordable housing funding when the property wasn't acquired with CPA funds, unless maybe it could be for support. Sorry to be confusing without CPA support.
Well, it has none of those.
But it, let's see. And it wouldn't start until January 2020, but would be completed in December 2020, they're saying. This is a confusing one. But we'll really need to talk to them about.
Yeah, we'll have to talk.
Well,
I think a lot of these were just, we can ask questions.
Eventually, we're gonna have to have them all in, but then
Right.
we have
Yeah.
some that we really need to do right
Yeah.
away.
More.
So I think we need more information on this. They'd have to get on a payment plan with the city. And it looks like only 348 Chestnut, which is 4852 Franklin, would be eligible for the historic rehab. And even that's unclear, since there's no proof that it's historically significant. And the other building from 1999 maybe could be eligible for CPA community housing support. But we need I would think we should ask for financial report or audit or tax returns on the Valley Opportunity Council and the other organization.
I think there's, I don't want to call it what I want to call it, but the Central Churchill Historic District that will likely be listed in the National Register of Historic Places if nominated by the State Historic Preservation Officer. Here we go with the ifs, maybes, and what ifs. And I don't believe that the State Historic Preservation Officer, right, can go about that has to come from local initiative. The owner has to do that, not the State Historic Preservation Officer. So there's some BS going on here.
It's an old building, that's it. There's nothing historic about it. It's an old building. It's a lot of old buildings.
Well, that makes it historic.
Well, not that
But
historic.
but this is,
I mean,
there's something something completely
background
wrong
on
with
them
this.
would be a good thing to have more of.
Well, I think background would be a little vague. I think we just need to know what evidence do you have that this building is historically significant?
And what their, and what amount they owe to the city.
Yeah. What do they owe? Yeah.
And here we go again, a potential historic district, you know?
Yeah, but it seems like they're saying they want to, I think this is the one where they're saying that they would hire a consultant to find out what work has to be done. So that makes me think that the motivation for this is not necessarily about historic rehabilitation.
Yeah.
because that's sort of an afterthought. Oh, yeah, we'll do that, we'll, hire
Exactly.
someone, so.
They need somebody to pick up the tab for the money. That's what they're looking for.
Okay, we're coming up on the 8 o'clock hour here, so
Oh.
let's
Oh, wow, okay.
move on to the next, the
Is this
last
the
two
last
here.
one? Or, we have two more, oh my gosh, it's
Maple
endless.
Street and
Okay.
Flats.
Maple Street, okay, I'll be quick. Maple Street, another historic rehab, repair of the front facade, et cetera, for 2 Victorian row houses. Yeah, 346 to 350 is one, and 352 to 356 Maple Street is the other, across from the Holyoke Library. And the owner is John Tansey. Well, actually, I found out he's not the owner. He says he's the owner, but he may own one of these properties, but he does not own, let's see which one it is. There's no record that he owns 346 Maple Street. It's still under Craig Crouch's name.
Okay.
He said the deal would go through when, I believe he said that to me when this application was submitted, November 30th, but when we looked online, maybe it just hasn't been updated, I don't know. It still did not have him listed as the owner. And I also emailed him to ask him for that information, and he didn't respond. So let's see what else. So they're asking for $39,777, which they say is less than 12% of the total budget, $342,510. Okay, the pros may be viable. These properties may be viable for CPA funding, or the 352 to 356 one only may be viable for funding, but more fiscal information and proof of control of the property is needed. And but the other thing is that the commission, the historic commission, did say that both properties are historically significant. The cons are, like I said, there's no record that John Tansey owns one of the properties, and $12,000 is owed. A lot of money is owed on that property, the one that is still under Craig Crouch's name. $12,000 is owned on the property because of a federal tax lien. That's the 346 Maple Street. I'm talking only 6,246. There's a 6,246 lien to Chase Bank. A 6,246. There's a 4,000 is owed to the state of Massachusetts on 346 Maple, and there's unpaid taxes to the city over $2,000. So all of the above means that even if he did own the property, that runs with the property, so it could be taken away. The property could be confiscated, that's what I understand.
So he needs a clear title.
And
It's money.
but also, even if he had the title, how is he going to pay all this money?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing regarding ongoing maintenance costs in this application. He didn't answer that question. There's no response, as I said, to my email, but maybe he just didn't see it, I don't know.
He also lives in Nicaragua, so
He lives in Nicaragua?
yeah,
Okay.
Well,
that's his,
then he'll surely join us, certainly, in a couple
well,
of
no,
weeks.
he's here most of the time, but that is his.
Yeah, but
That's where he's
okay,
from.
maybe he's in transit.
So he goes back and forth. Because this
he
is
do
one
for?
of my, the ones
But
that I
all
had
the
to look
stuff that I told you about the money owed and that, I found this out, this wasn't stuff that was in there, so,
at. And I didn't know any of it.
It's a
This is all
concern.
news to me.
so,
Okay, so we will
Yeah, that's
talk to
great
them.
research.
well, Alicia's Zoller helped out a lot. So, yeah, I recommend we get more information on the applicant and the ownership of the buildings, his finances.
Unpaid taxes.
Right now,
citizen.
only 352 to 356 may be viable if he really owns that property and, doesn't own everything, checks out with that,
Alrighty,
Okay.
what's the next one?
Okay, the last one. Flats Community Building, 1 Holyoke CDC again, 43 Canal Street. It's called the Flats Community Building. This is another historic rehab project on the exterior. Stucco
excuse me.
repair, better lighting, signage, and an accessible entryway was mentioned.
Do they have a dollar request? Because
55,000. Yeah, it was not listed on the cover sheet. The cover sheet was incomplete. It had no budget on it or start or end dates listed. I don't think there was no historic commission letter.
This is the one that Marco commented on at our last meeting about, that he thought that underneath the stucco was the historic part
Yeah.
of the building.
And that maybe the
versus-
stucco was added when it was the Polish,
So he said if it
American
was
Club,
going to be.
Portuguese Club, sorry.
brought
Took it
back
over, they put it on.
historically, then the stucco should be taken off, and.
Yes,
So
he's
that
right.
would be something to ask, is what is the historic piece here?
No, the Portuguese put it on when they bought it.
And they don't have any of the bids done yet. They're waiting for the funding to be awarded. Then they're gonna go out for bidding on all the different project, the architect and consultants, so
Yeah, and just to add a
that's kind of.
twist to this,
Yeah.
I think the first time that it was brought up, we had a discussion about the stucco, and somebody said it had been added later, and I said, well, does that mean the stucco has to come off? And the answer was, at that time, well, no, because that's Portuguese architecture, and that's the
It could
Portuguese
be
Okay,
protected.
so
component of
that-
it there.
that's
Megan
historic.
said
So, you know, we have both an opinion that the stucco would have to be conserved and an opinion that historic rehab requires the stucco to go. And we might want to qualify, you know, like,
What
which
is
is it? Because it can't be both.
Either could
No, it
be,
can't be, no.
either argument could be justified. Either argument could be justified under the standards set by the Department of the Interior. Based on what they're arguing, they believe the historical significance of the building is.
So
Well, whatever the
guess we need
premise-
to know what that is.
Yeah.
Well, it is, I
think
actually
they-
did confirm with Debbie Opperman at the Historic Commission that it is part of, she wasn't sure at first if it was part of what they're saying, the Hadley Falls Historic District. And they did include some information that did mention this building in the map, and I asked her to look at it, just because she's more experienced, and, you know, she says, yes, it looks like it is, so, that it would be part of that district, so. But it seems the cons are, it seems that that CPA would be the only funding source. As I said, the application cover sheet was incomplete with no budget on the top part of it, but I guess the Interior did say 55,000 was the request. And there wasn't any letter from the Historic Commission, but maybe that's because they did include, actually that was okay, because they included the information about the fact that they were in the historic district. But to me, it's unclear if this will restore the existing historic resources as we were talking about, or if it's just a repair to the building. There's just a lot of unknowns with it.
Yeah.
So.
You know, I know it's just a small point of order, but the actual historic significance is that's part of row housing. All the housing is brick and 19th century structure. There's no, I can't, just lost my train of thought. There's no stucco anywhere in the flats as far as I can remember. But what's historical about it is the brickwork underneath it, because those streets are all, that's all row housing, historic 19th century row housing. That's the historic. If you want to be historic, we'll take off the stucco and bring it back to the 19th century look. That's historic.
Well,
the counter.
I guess what you were saying is more like,
Yeah, no, I think the
There's two-
counter argument is that this is, you know, the stucco is characteristic of a certain culture, and it was added at a particular moment by a particular community to whom
So
this
that's a
is
different,
traditional.
it's something
I
to
mean,
consider.
I
yeah.
too, and I think this came up in the first point because I was making that argument about, wait, it's a row house, shouldn't it be brick?
Right.
And this was the answer that I got, was, but wait, this is Polish community, this is the architecture. And then, you know, I think Marco last time started saying, but no, you know, really, it should be back to the brick. And, you know, it'd be nice to
historic nature.
clarify it
Well,
and see what,
since it is a historic district, what we should do is get a letter of recommendation from the Historic Commission.
Commission.
as to
Yeah, what do you want to do?
what historic year would you like?
Oh, so with specifications about what they think should be restored.
What's their definition of?
yeah.
Of this particular building and
particular
how
building.
it should be restored.
Be a basic, you want brick or stucco?
Yeah,
Well,
basically.
What argument do you want us to consider?
Yeah.
We will consider either one, but we're not going to consider both simultaneously.
Yeah, you're the Historic Commission, you tell us,
Right.
right?
Right.
Sounds fair?
Yeah, that's it. That's their job.
Okay, just looking to see if there's anything I've left out here. I think that's about it.
So,
great.
is it January 7th?
No, we have to set a meeting
Okay,
date.
so
We'll
meeting
set a
date.
meeting date, and we'll have, at least start with those 3 projects.
Those 3?
Which, oh, the developer incentive ones?
Developer incentive, yes.
Oh, okay, so do you want to decide on a date?
Well, first of all, we gotta finish the agenda here.
Oh, right, oh my gosh.
Fortunately, we still have some things here. Amy, you had something to say about hours going forward?
Oh, I just wanted to, well, but Andrew's not here, I know that there's more money in the budget, and we've talked through email about how I'm working more hours because of the work to be done now, and I'm just wondering
I wouldn't go too
about,
far with that ahead, because right now, yes, you maybe can work more hours because you need them, but going forward, you won't be able to continue.
well, that's what
it.
I'm bringing it up
Yeah,
on the
you
agenda,
know,
because I want to
You won't be able
know.
to continue that rate of hours going forward, for sure.
Well, there is more money in the budget, though.
There
so-
is.
Well, perhaps we should have this discussion when Andrew is actually here.
Yeah, it's just that it would be good
But
to
I just want to
know.
let her know
How much
that
you can
now.
work?
Right, it's
wanna-
hard for me to plan my, work
Exactly.
hours, not knowing how many hours I can work. But
I know,
I know right now, Andrew said, he said I could work up to 35 per week.
but not continuously.
Well,
till
I
the end.
totally understand that, Elaine, yeah.
Just
But
wanna
now
make-
is when we need her.
Yes, exactly.
But I just need to know, what the hours will be, that's all.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
You're sure, Andrew said 35 hours a week? Up to 35 a week.
working quite that many, but,
Well, keep going.
right now.
If you've got any questions, just shoot him an email.
Well,
But
she
you
has
keep
to
up the
know
work.
that-
You got the work to do. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Well, there'll
has-
be a lot of work also when I have to work on preparing these contracts, and all that is also going to be very time
So you
consuming.
need to save some time for that,
Yeah.
because, yes. Okay, site visits?
Yeah, I do think that we'll need to have site visits, and that's another thing that you need to take, and I think I should be doing at some point, so both, before, during, after,
I don't know
And
what-
I'm around to do site visits
unless,
also.
committee members want to take that on, so.
Well, we would, whatever projects we have that we signed on to, we'll definitely make site visits to those in addition to what you're planning on doing. I don't know, we'll see. We can't, we're not gonna do site visits now because
We don't know.
we don't know
have the
what's, we
information
don't
to
know.
discuss
So
it.
don't worry about site visits yet. It's too early for that, so.
Well, before you decide to recommend a project, you'll want to look at a site. I would, that's what,
depends.
that's what's done
I
usually,
mean,
is
it
see
depends,
what
yeah.
you're funding,
I am willing to look at, or to fund the city hall
already know
windows
it.
without
I
a
mean,
site visit.
yeah, I mean,
What?
I don't need any site visits. Most of these I've been through,
Yeah,
one way or
right.
the other.
if necessary, let's put it that way, we will, but the site visit's gonna be coming in when they start the projects.
Okay.
That's when we need to watch them for sure, but anyways, everybody has their
But then you're really
projects.
going on faith that,
Well,
that if you decide to give money to something without looking at it, you don't really know
No.
if it really
Beyond
has
the-
the
we
need.
have looked at
On
them.
the
The
scope
ones
of
that
this
have
meeting.
projects, they've looked at them, and they've walked them, they've
Uh-huh.
looked at them.
Every single one.
So, we're pretty secure as far as that goes. For right now, we're okay.
Okay.
All right?
Um,
Yeah, so, the minutes, they're all here, so we have 4 meetings, so I don't think we're gonna be able to do them tonight, because
Okay, well, I
nobody-
will propose.
no one has read them.
People can bring these home and read them. I did
Yeah.
something different this
Can
time,
we-
which is
yeah.
to say, I didn't do anything. I really liked Ryan's drafts, which were very complete and much longer than you're accustomed to seeing from me. I also loved what Megan did with her, as it were, live blog of our last meeting.
Is there any other way that we can vote on these things? We can't do them, by reading these at home, and
Yeah.
we'll just wait till next meeting?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
happy to
so
do it next
everybody-
meeting. I'm just giving you guys homework because, this is different. Take a look, see if you're happy. If you're not happy, I can revise them.
This is a package of all
A
of them?
package of all 4 meetings.
Okay, I don't need them because I've
And
got
the
them.
meetings dates are,
Nice comment.
the meeting dates are, should be 9/17, maybe you should, and 10/1.
No, I'm all set. If they pass Mimi's inspection, they got my vote.
10-1, 10-15, and 11-26.
Yeah.
Okay, so make sure that, yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
And
so
this is
we'll
just, the more complex
table
our
that,
work
and the same
gets,
thing
the
with the
more I
treasurer.
kind of think, maybe we want memorials of what we're saying instead of just a one line, here's what we
I just
did,
missed
and
it.
here's what we concluded, which I had been boiling it down to for the sake of convenience. And as I say, we can go back to that, we can do something in the middle, but, you know, I thought Ryan was doing a good job of catching what actually happened as it went by, and it's all in there.
Okay,
So,
So Amy, could you email those people that are here tonight, Andrew and Marco, and ask them, make sure they come down and get these packets for you, and also these packets that you did up.
Okay, just put them on top there. So email Andrew and who else?
Marco?
Marco?
Okay,
Crescentini?
okay.
Oh, Crescentine.
Crescentini.
Those are the only two, right?
right.
Yeah. Okay, and so let's pick another meeting date.
And also, what do we want to happen at the next meeting? Do you want to actually, you want to meet with the people who did the developer incentive?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That will definitely be.
Those,
on.
there's
Marco.
three.
Those three, for sure.
Well, can we pick a meeting date
That's
without knowing
Marcos
about
Marrero.
their availability?
Well, yeah, well.
I don't have
we'll-
my phone, unfortunately, to look at
I have a
dates. but-
calendar right here. We'll pick a meeting date, and if, hopefully they'll be able to be there, and if not, then we'll have to go.
I can't meet on Mondays anymore
Right,
if it's
so
January.
that's fine. So starting in January, we have to meet on Thursdays, is the only other night that all of us can make? Was it
I can make
Thursday
most
or
of them.
Wednesday?
Yeah.
I have conservation on some of those.
Thursday.
What
I
is
mean,
it?
but it's not about me, only, but I can do Thursday.
Oh, you can do Thursdays. How about everybody else? Is Thursdays?
I'm okay.
Most of them I can do. I have conservation
Probably.
every other.
Thursday,
Yeah.
Amy?
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure.
Probably.
Um,
It's hit or miss.
Yeah, hit or miss.
Well, I
You
don't
have-
have my phone with my
floating meetings
calendar
and many
in
of
front of
them.
me, but I think Thursday will be
So let's
okay.
pick,
Are there any other days that are possible?
Go one meeting at a time.
Oh, yes,
makes
exactly.
sense.
We're only gonna do one meeting now, that's all.
Can we pick like the next possible Thursday?
We're looking at a Thursday, right? Okay, so
In
in January 2019, we can do, well, we won't do the 3rd, because but we could do the 10th or the 17th. That's a Thursday night.
Okay, that's totally changing but if you want to,
Well, that,
Do
yeah,
that.
but that
We'll
has
just have
nothing
less
to do with
time.
that schedule. This is out of your schedule. This is not part of,
no, this is not my schedule. This is the schedule I presented to the committee last
Right,
time,
right,
and
but
everybody
we're-
so
seemed
this
to.
We're
is just
still
to
gonna-
gather information, it's like an extra
I
meeting.
know, I'm just,
this is an extra meeting that we're sticking in there. We're not, we're still gonna follow your schedule.
Okay, well, our schedule did call for questions in writing to go
Right.
to Amy on the 7th or
by the 7th.
by the 7th.
Which
I
we
think
will do.
any,
We'll all
yes,
do
we
that.
will stick to that if we're going to, I mean, to the extent we have questions that can
Because
be
they'll need to
emailed.
come prepared to
Yeah.
the
I
meeting.
propose to be sending you questions.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I think we should
Okay.
meet on the 10th as soon as possible after.
Yeah,
Can I just ask, is Thursday the only good day?
I can't do Tuesdays, that's my only real
I
constraint.
mean, like, is Wednesday possible?
Wednesday's possible. I can't be here till 6:45.
Oh,
And that's gonna push the meeting really late.
and Tuesday's not possible?
I have planning board meetings.
Okay, so let's just say Thursday, then.
Thursday, the 10th, and that's just for that meeting.
January 10th.
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
Okay, we have to hope they can make it, too.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well-
you'll let them know. and
They want their money, they will.
That's exactly right. See what kind of priority it is.
Yeah, because we want to stick to your schedule as much as we can, so the sooner the better. that we
Okay.
can Get in there in the 10th. Okay, and I think, anybody else have other business that they want to bring up? The treasurer's report, we'll have to table that for now because he's
Yeah.
not here, so.
January 10th at 6 o'clock.
Yep, it's a Thursday night.
Motion to adjourn?
What's that?
second.
Yes, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays and happy, healthy New Year, all that good stuff.